Hey up, I want this to be a short video today, but it probably won't be. I haven't done any filming for this video because there's nothing I can really film, but luckily I spent 3 days, full days last week, filming the 350 review footage. So I'm just going to allow some of that to replay while I'm talking. Now, the main subject of this video is an answer to dozens of questions that I've had over the last 3 weeks about the braking or running procedure for the new Classic 350. Before I get into that, I'd like to just point out that the Super Thanks button has now been activated on my YouTube channel on the account. I think they've just rolled it out to everyone, although they have been trialling it with some channels for quite a few months now. Now, the button is just below the video that you're watching now with the sort of likes and dislikes icons, all that sort of thing. And it acts as a sort of a tipping jar. You know, if you like my content, if you like the particular video that you're watching, you can make an instant donation to the channel, which really helps me out with the running of things. And I think in return you get like a highlighted comment if you're into that sort of thing. I've got to admit, I don't know fully how it works yet. I only activated it on Wednesday, and 1 or 2 kind people took advantage of it straight away. Thank you very much. It does help me out. Right, running in procedure for motorcycles, and in particular the new Classic 350. I actually made a video about running bikes in, I think it's about 3 years ago now. Now granted, I've got over 500 videos, so people have probably missed it. I've got a lot of people asking me about the running in procedure, how to go about it, and a few people suggesting this Motorman method that's been sort of kicking around the internet for years now. And I'll be honest, I struggle to believe that mature, sane people still take this method seriously. The internet can be a wonderful thing when it comes to gaining knowledge, but it can also be a curse. I mean, I've lost count of the amount of silly videos that I get popping up on my feed about mixing Coca-Cola with your petrol will give you a 50% reduction in fuel usage. I even saw one from India the other day prescribing that you should fill your bike tank up with water instead of petrol. You should all know by now that the internet is just full of crap, some of which can be harmful to you, some of which can be harmful to your motorbike. Which is why I'll often say in my videos, you know, don't just take my word for it, do your own research. Now, this Motorman method of breaking your motorcycle in appeared about 8 or 9 years ago on the internet, I think. And even now, I get comments in the comments section of my videos saying, "Oh, Stuart, you don't need to break modern motorcycles in, they're already broken in at the factory. You're just wasting your time. All you need to do is jump on the bike, take it through the gearbox, redline it in every gear, and continue riding it like that for 20 miles or 50 miles or whatever it is they prescribe. Then you stop, you let the bike cool down, then you do this, then you do that, and then your bike's properly running and it'll run perfectly forever." Now, let me tell you something about this Motorman method. This is a method that is sometimes used in the world of amateur motorcycle racing, or even professional racing at the lower levels. Now, it's quite unlikely nowadays that a new engine will seize if you push it too hard. Tolerances and metallurgy are far better than they were sort of back in the 70s, 60s or 50s. But a new engine is still relatively tight compared to its normal operating parameters when it's new, until it's been running and the mating surfaces have been worn down suitably for it to operate normally. Tight components in the engine create friction, which can prohibit a new engine from realising its full power output. That friction also creates heat. In some cases it can be excessive heat that might lead to a seizure, but that excessive heat can also cause other damage if it goes too far. Now, a new competition motorcycle with an engine in that state is a liability for the person that's racing it. First of all, it can't release the full power potential, so it's not going to be as competitive as it could be. And that's the main consideration for these people. So they use this Motorman method to loosen the engine up so that it'll run competitively for, you know, its first, second, third, fourth, whatever, how many races it runs. But you talk to anyone who has raced motorcycles competitively, either professionally or at an amateur level, and they will all tell you that they have to strip their engines down completely, replace a lot of parts, and then rebuild them at the very least once a season. Because although it quickly releases the racing potential of that motorcycle, it's only temporary. What they've actually done is damaged the engine, so within a few thousand miles, that engine will be in a state similar to an engine that's done 50 or maybe even 100,000 miles. It'll be damn near worn out. Now, a lot of the lame brains that leave comments in my comment section that have tried this method, yeah, initially for the first 2,000 or 3,000 miles they'll think it's great because the bike will perform well. It may or may not burn a bit of oil, but as far as they're concerned, this method works because most of them will only run that bike for a year or so. They might only cover 2,000 or 3,000 miles, and then they'll trade it in for another one, so they don't get to see the consequences of the damage that they've caused. That becomes the problem of another owner later on in the game. Contrary to what people may tell you, the running in of a motorcycle doesn't just relate to bedding in the piston rings. There's a lot more to it than that. Every moving component in your engine is subject to wear. It'll be slightly tight. That's why you change your oil early when you're running a new motorcycle in, because if you've ever done the oil change yourself, there'll be a lot of tiny metal particles in that oil, and these are the little bits of metal that have been abraded away during the run-in process. And they need to be abraded away gently so all the surfaces mate together smoothly and no damage is caused. Now, if you use the Motorman method, you're effectively subjecting your motorcycle engine to violence. And although that mating process will have taken place, it'll be a much rougher and cruder form of mating, which sounded better in my head than when I said it out loud, but I'm sure you know what I mean. Now, think about it for just a moment. If this Motorman method is the perfect way of running in a new motorcycle engine, a way that ensures maximum performance, maximum fuel efficiency, and maximum long life, why don't the manufacturers recommend it? Why do they recommend something which is completely contrary to the Motorman method? I'll tell you why. The manufacturer of your motorcycle engine designed that engine. They developed that engine. They tested that engine for tens of thousands of miles, and during that testing and development stage, they frequently pulled those engines apart, examined them for wear, and made all the necessary modifications to make sure that that engine will run as well as it possibly can. They then manufactured that engine en masse to be fitted into your bike. They know that engine better than anyone else in the world. And when they sell that bike to you, they give you a warranty. It could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be 3 years, it could be even more. They have effectively signed a legally binding contract to stand by the quality of that engine for a predetermined length of time. And the last thing they want is half of their customers coming back after a year and 10,000 miles, or 2 years and 20,000 miles, complaining that their engines are worn out and they want them replacing. Because obviously that is likely to put that company out of business. Now, if in your handbook they were to recommend the Motorman method, that obviously is exactly what is going to happen. They'll get an unacceptable amount of these bikes back under warranty for repair that have been worn out prematurely. Because running your bike engine in using a method of violence causes long-term damage. So they set up a run-in schedule that will ensure a long life for that engine, as long a life as possible, so they don't have any warranty problems further down the road. It's not just for your benefit, it's for their benefit as well. It's not some sort of conspiracy that manufacturers put into place so that they can stand on street corners in disguise watching their customers bored out of the brains, running the motorcycles around at low speed so that they can have a laugh at them. So the first piece of advice I'm going to give you is follow your manufacturer's instructions for engine braking. It's tedious, I know, but it's the best possible thing you can do for the long life of your motorcycle and the health of your bank account. Next piece of advice is don't forget, in the early stages of running, it's not just your engine that needs to be running. Your tyres and your brakes are not going to be operating at optimal performance. Your tyres generally will need about 100 miles to scuff in and roughen up so that they're gripping the road properly. And your brakes will take anything up to 300 miles for the pads to bed in properly with the discs. So from a safety point of view, bear that in mind for the first few hundred miles that you own a new bike. Now, a lot of manufacturers will specify that during the running period you should stick to a certain revs per minute schedule. You know, don't exceed 4,500 revs for the first 300 miles, and then you can increase it to 6,000 revs per minute. The Classic 350 doesn't have a rev counter. So Royal Enfield gives you a table of maximum speeds in each gear. As a general rule, stick to that. Now, bear in mind with modern bikes they have an ECU. I'm not entirely sure what the state of play is with the Classic 350, but these ECUs collect data from the usage of the bike. It may be possible for a dealer to ascertain whether or not the revs were exceeded during the running period of that bike, should you have a problem with that engine and try to claim on your warranty at a later date. So using the Motorman method and then lying to your dealership if you have a problem later on might not work. Now, during your running period, the first 50 miles, I would say, is the zone in the use of that bike where the most wear is going to occur. That's the period of time when it's at its tightest. So during the first 50 miles, accelerate smoothly but not too quickly. What I mean is just be a little bit more gentle than you normally would be. Ensure where you can that you reach the maximum speed that the table in your running instructions prescribe. What I see a lot of people doing when they're running a new bike in is they will read the manufacturer's instructions and then they will set their own safety margins to ensure that they don't exceed what the manufacturer says. And they will start to short shift. If the manufacturer's instructions say that you shouldn't exceed 30 miles per hour in a specific gear, they will change gear at 25 miles per hour. Or 20 miles per hour, thinking that somehow that is going to run the engine in better. It's not. In fact, it could even cause damage. The manufacturer has already set safety margins with his running procedure, so there's no need to do that. In fact, I would argue that it's better to momentarily exceed his recommendations than to short shift and change gear before the engine is ready to accept that gear. That actually puts more stress on the engine than slightly exceeding the prescribed speed. We've all ridden a pedal cycle and we all know that if you put a pedal cycle in top gear before you're able to cope with that top gear, it is immensely hard to gain momentum with that bike and get it up to the acceptable speed for that gear. You have to push those pedals with all your might to get it going, and that's exactly what your engine's having to do if you short shift and change gear too early, especially during the running period. This can cause what is known as piston slap. There's so much pressure on the engine that the piston itself starts to rock slightly in the bore, and this can cause abnormal long-term wear and damage. Babying an engine and allowing it to lug is possibly the worst thing you can do during the running period. Now, on top of that, I would also suggest that you avoid very steep hills and try not to carry a pillion during the running period. Give your bike as easy a time as you possibly can during those first few hundred miles prescribed by the manufacturer. Now, after those first 50 miles or so, you can accelerate normally, and I mean normally, not at full throttle. Accelerate at a pace that will keep up with normal traffic, the way you would normally ride, but still observe those limits that are set in your manufacturer's manual for running. Now, it is helpful, if you can, during the running period, to choose the roads that you ride on carefully. Riding in an urban environment is good as long as you're not stuck in standstill traffic for long periods of time. Stopping, starting, going up and down your gearbox is good for the bike during the running period. That helps with the bedding process. It also ensures that you're constantly varying your engine speed. Just try not to get yourself in a situation where you're sitting in standstill bumper-to-bumper traffic for long periods of time. If you do find yourself in that situation, don't panic. Just switch your engine off until you see the traffic ahead of you moving again, and then restart your engine when things get going. That'll help to prevent a new engine from overheating. Twisting, winding, country roads are also great for the running procedure. You're accelerating, you're shutting the throttle off and using engine braking, and engine braking is important for running. And you're running up and down through the gearbox, varying your engine speed exactly how it should be during the running process. Most manuals will tell you not to stick at one speed and to vary the engine speed by at least 10%. That's easily done in normal riding, even on country roads. You're constantly having to slow down for speed limits, you're then able to speed back up again. Don't sit there sort of shutting your throttle off and opening it up. I have seen people do that. You won't be able to keep it up for long. You'll soon get fed up of doing that. And really, normal riding in normal traffic is enough to achieve varying your engine speed. There's no need to consciously do it. Just try and stay away from very long straight roads, especially motorways. You can't vary your speed effectively on long straight roads and motorways. They are not a good environment for a motorcycle that's going through the running period. Now, the Royal Enfield manual does tell you that during the running process you should stop at least once an hour and allow the engine to cool down briefly. I agree with that. In fact, in the first 50 miles I would suggest no more than half an hour in between stops. You don't have to let the engine cool down completely, just give it 10 or 15 minutes for the worst of the heat to dissipate before setting off again. The reasoning behind this is that some components in your engine are tempered, and if they reach too high a temperature it can upset or destroy that tempering. I've got to admit, I've never actually heard of this happening, but it doesn't do any harm to follow that advice during the running period when the engine is likely to be running at its hottest. Do the best you can to follow these guidelines, but don't let them consume your riding for the first few hundred miles. Above all, enjoy your motorcycle. Just ride it and enjoy it. And don't worry if you sort of get distracted and you momentarily exceed the recommended speeds. It's not the end of the world, and it's very unlikely that, providing it is only momentarily, that it's going to cause any damage. Right, so those are my views on the Motorman method and the correct procedure for running your motorcycle in. Other people have different views, they're entitled to them, I don't want to hear them. And you don't have to adhere to what I've told you here if you don't want to. At the end of the day, it's your money, it's your motorcycle, you do what you like with it. But people have been asking my advice, that is my advice. Once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you would leave a like, and if you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing. I am, of course, going to be back next week, so until then, ride safely, and I'll see you soon.